All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Straight Society YouTube channel. I am Seay, and it's been a significant amount of time since I've attempted to make any kind of YouTube video. And the videos that I've made in the past have really been reflective, discussing what I thought on, communal issues or things that I encountered in my experience. And it led me to a hiatus on what stance to make when it comes to when you speak publicly. And many people, I can't say most people, but many people have confidence when they speak, regardless of if the substance in which they speak is something that they've wrestled with deeply, something that they've looked for facts to validate, or if it's the actual right thing to support. Many people will look at the result and say that is what makes a thing good or bad, or that's what makes a thing a righteous move if it made money. And I've just had many conflicts with that personally. And I wanted to take the time to really wrestle with what I think, because I don't think it's as simple as if it makes money, it's good. I know people that have become very, very successful. And I wouldn't follow a word that they say. Being rich or wealthy does not mean you are wise enough to give life advice. And I'm not here to say that I am here to give you life advice. And when you begin to wrestle with the reasons a person would idealize themselves as a conservative, you have to be able to identify what that is, And I think that's one of the biggest struggles with our community, because, that is immediately associated with things like coon, which is, we've labeled things in a way where we've created a paradox where we really can't change. And if we do change, morph, evolve, you're kicked out of the community, in some instances. And for me, I believe that exists simply because no one has demonstrated it in a way where it is fitting for us. Now, we are living in a new era, and then maybe that's why I have a bit more confidence, let's say, to speak these ideas, because we're living in a time now where our people are finally looking at the other side, and looking at the side that we've been so loyal to, and they're changing their mind, we're changing our mind. And so I would like to now take this moment to discuss a little bit about why or how I became a conservative-minded person, because it's not always been the case. Looking back, coming up, I've never even desired to be a part of the political world. To me, it was irrelevant. Is what I always heard. Is what was said. And you are a victim, or you play a pivotal part in what the culture says around you, unless there's a stronger voice that guides you to kind of protect you from that. And that's just not a very popular notion in the Black community, and people know that. And so their experience is hard for them to go against what the culture says, because the culture is their home, it's where they're comfortable, it's our, it's how we operate. I just stayed out of it, and I thought it was all a scam. And so my mindset was really focused on economical gains, in the sense of, okay, because initially I was a music artist. That's what it was. But all of my music, even within that, was more so questioning, I had existential questions about the world. Like, that's where I was at for me, was trying to discover and discern, like, what is good and what is bad, what is for me. And that's a path in itself that takes you, if you are reflective enough to go through the experiences and learn from them. I mean, you can grow through that process. And I would say that's kind of what I've encountered. Now, that's the hard way. I think that's the hard way. And people that are hard-headed don't even learn the hard way. They just hit their heads constantly and can't seem to understand what is taking place. And they end up in a weird looping cycle. And you know what I mean. For me, I don't think I really repeated any of my, transgressions, let's say. And I would go through something, I would commit an action, and then I would learn from that action and make a different decision, because I was able to be reflective enough to do so. Many people just don't take that they don't have the time, maybe, or maybe there's just too much going on where they don't even get that peace of mind to do such things. And for me, that's just not the case. I've always been a pretty reflective person, and so I ended up in a, let's just get to it. And I met, and I've said this in past videos, but it's irrelevant. I don't have followers yet. So I'm going to reestablish what I'm saying here, because I do believe at some point this will be relevant to a body of people. It might, even if it's a small body of people, I still think it's still appropriate to do such. So I was working a job. I was working a factory job, pretty good job. Don't get me wrong. It was a career to a certain degree, depending on what you deem a career as, but it's not a place you want to retire at, So it's not that type of place. It's not a transformative career job. You're working at a plant. You're a piece. You're a number, right? But you're making a good income, probably in comparison to your parents, considering where we come from. I am from Montgomery, Alabama, so you can imagine the history of the city and the ramifications of what the city went through, and what kind of mindset you could imagine that the parents could have coming up, decades after everything that went on with the 60s. We'll dive into that another time. Right now, I'm just trying to establish one thing. And working that job for such a long time, and I was chasing what I don't like to use this term, a dream, but it was still dream-like, because of the patterns in which I went about to achieve it were not as, they were not rooted in long-term successful gains. They were more like short gambles that didn't go my way. I've done some very aggressive investing, and I think that's part and parcel because I've seen people in my family do nothing, and so that was just part of it, was going through the fear of losing, and I did that, and I lost a lot, and that's cool, because through the losses, again, I reflect, I've learned massively, and so when I finally got the I don't want to use that word, but used the cojones to quit my job, right? And I decided that, okay, the biggest thing that is wrong with the Black community here is economically we are not aggregated in a way in which will positively impact us as a whole in any manner, right? And so that's obvious. Anybody that, that's probably what all people that are successful around here are thinking. And so in my mind, I have a particular sound when it came to the music, but also a mindset. I thought the mindset was more important than just the sound. The sound was very important, but I wanted to establish something different, and even looking back at any of my old, when I had like showcases or anything, or any kind of promo material, I would always talk about a new culture. I would always talk about culture shift, and this is prior to anything that was where I am today. I was not there. I was in a place where I was operating almost from my subconscious thought in a way, my unconscious thought. Sorry. What's the same thing? Unconscious, subconscious, same thing. Yeah. But once I got out there, I realized, and one thing about it, when you actually are trying to get on the same page with multiple types of people, and I spoke about this in past videos, and that was just my experiences of what I was feeling at the moment. But I realized that when we come together, that we must agree to a large portion of what we are doing. We must agree. We must see it from a similar place, because it's how we stay aligned. That's a such thing. That's why companies have values, for example, and that's why they train you, and that's why they have their background story. Well, it seems the same thing is necessary when we're coming together to ascend, right? We're trying to move forward. We're trying to progress. We're trying to grow. And in order to do that, we can't pull in different directions. And so you'll have someone that's within that bunch. So the people that I was, really targeting, and this is no offense to none of them, because neither here nor there, it's irrelevant. But this is still a bigger point of what happens when we as a community are trying to come together. It's important because the first thing that's going to come up many times is, we all could have different thoughts because of this new world we live in, where there's this celebration for diversity in thought, I suppose, or just bringing that to the table at any point that seems relevant. And those type of ideas I've seen them on multiple occasions deteriorate any kind of connection that is at the table if you are not prepared to deal with that. And for me, I was not. I was attempting to try to bring this together in an organic manner where I thought that if we could get in a room, that the people that were willing to participate would eventually land, mentally in a place where we're aligning. I learned, and I'm glad I did those experiences. I've had many groups, many, and they never really went far. But they still were great experiences because I learned what works and what doesn't. What are the things? What approaches work and what turns into a mini war? What could happen, and that's part of the journey as well. And so I ended up working under quite a few very prominent local leaders, let's say, even people that were attempting to be local leaders, but still intelligent people. And intelligent people has nothing to do with their intellect, but the ideas that we are unifying upon are not unifying narratives, and no one has been able to really identify that within my group, my networks, and it's been extremely problematic. And so the very first moment that I ended up getting into politics was, again, I was focused on economics. So my mindset was, okay, I'm going to provide marketing to entities such as this. And my mindset was trying to attach to the education field, which it didn't work out in the manner that I would have liked, but it was the pathway I was on because in my mind, I believed that education had a lot to do with, our difference in wealth. And this is just from an obvious, this is an obvious one, at least that's what I was thinking. And it just didn't go so well trying to align with positive leaders. It didn't go well. Our philosophies in mine was very immature at that point, not developed, but I just instinctually did not graft towards certain ideas. And these ideas often led to attributing the issues of the individual to external forces. And here's the thing. I know that's a common thing that's said, scholars have probably been saying this stuff, but I wasn't listening to scholars. Who does that on a daily basis? So I used to always say, why are we trying to make the neighbor do something we can't make our kids do? And that's kind of how I felt about it. And this is years ago. I used to always say that. And I wanted to act upon that. But I didn't understand what I was getting into. I had no idea how conflicting of a notion it was. No clue how upsetting that would be for people. And I never just came out and said it, but I can just see it within the conversations on how they handle issues. And I kept just trying to figure out why. Why is this? So I started identifying it and realizing, I'm like, okay, so I got hired I'm freelancing at the time, and I got hired to work at a political event. This is my very first interaction with politics on a personal level. And, I'm not a stupid person, so I decided to actually listen. I listened as I filmed. I filmed the whole event, and I listened to what the speakers were saying and what they were complaining about. This is what it felt like. And it was mostly pointed towards what other people needed to do to change. And I just was like, okay. I wasn't really understanding how we could do such a thing, but that was the idea. Gentrification was one of the main things that they were, of course, upset about at the time. And I ended up accompanying one of the plaintiffs that was fighting such a case. And now that is to say that to do such a thing and connect that to black people is to say that the Democratic Party is for black people. And I was appalled. I didn't you really feel that way. And I couldn't hear a good reason on why he felt that way or why they felt that way. I couldn't. They never would explain it. It was always more show than tell. Always. And it just left more questions than answers. But I was still curious. So I worked under that collective. It wasn't very long. And look, I could have made money off the situation if I would have been the type of person to not give a damn about what the rudiments of this conversation is and just do the job, shut up, and be supportive. Uh, Probably would have made pretty good money, but I did the very opposite. I went to DC, but I complained the whole time because I thought that everything we were doing was stupid. That's just me. I just thought that. I don't want to be outside protesting with people that don't care about what we're saying. It just didn't make sense to me. And I was struggling because I didn't understand politics or government operations very well, but it just felt stupid to me. And I was trying to understand why are we not fixing this through some other kind of economic arrangement where people that look like us actually made money while doing the things that matter. And I just couldn't fathom it, and I couldn't understand it. So it led me to find people that had answers. And I ran into Thomas Sowell, and he blew my mind. I mean, I had to get all his books. I stalked him on YouTube. I was obsessed with him, and trying to and not recognizing what the large Black community has probably thought of him or have not thought of him at all. I had no idea about that either. I was just looking at his information and thought that this was mind blowing. Why doesn't every Black person in America know this dude? This is crazy. This guy is summing up some of the most complicated things. So it took time. I spent a lot of time with him. He was my introduction into a different perspective. And yet I still, I wasn't going out the next day and like, hey, such and such Thomas Sowell. No. I didn't know that much, that was not going to be something they was interested in. So I just kept listening. I would still be in the mix of the Democratic ideas, I guess you could say. And I got quite a few jobs. Just small gigs. It wasn't nothing like it was major. I didn't help on the campaign. I got really close, and we'll talk about that later. I was in a position where, okay, before I got that gig, I made a pivotal decision to enter the School of Psychology. Now, I got introduced into Jordan Peterson. Now I've been listening to Peterson for some time, but he's a very complicated man, and I couldn't relate what he's saying to the Black community. I mean, to a certain extent, but it was a stretch, coming from where I come from. Like nobody wants to hear that. But a lot of the things that he talked about was very attractive, of course. I don't think he spoke. Many people say he just spoke to the lowly-minded man, I guess, but I don't think it's just that. But he spoke to meaning. Now I found that appealing. And so since these freelancing gigs they weren't working out, and look, I mentioned I was an artist, but obviously I'm not the typical operating artist here. I'm not a person that just loves to sing and dance. It's more so, it was about the meaning more so than anything. And I didn't go do a great job of I guess marketing that. I was still establishing who I am as a person, which was, for me, is what's important to me. I don't have that circle that helped me develop such a thing. They're not interested in these. They're not interested in this. Not really. I had to wrestle with that. These are the type of things you have to wrestle with on your own, unless you're within a group that is wrestling with some of the same things. And I didn't experience that. So I decided to take up psychology in college, late bloomer. But I found it important because science has a language in which, if you can utilize it and grasp its theories, it can improve the way you deal with the world immensely. And it's done that. It's done that for me. And so recently now, I've had another opportunity to work, and I wasn't sure if this was going to be a Democratic Republican situation. I was hoping it was more of a bipartisan situation personally, because at this point, I'm a bit deeper in what I think about some things. I've been introduced to Vivek Ramaswamy. I've read 2 of his books. I see things a little bit differently. I'm introduced to Glenn Loury, who is, a phenomenal thinker. He blows my mind every time he speaks. He's so eloquently spoken. It's amazing. once you get a taste of that type of explanation of the world, you kind of don't want to go backwards. But you don't feel fit because you're not there with them. You can easily not feel fit being a black person or somebody who's not, wealthy or highly successful or, the high GPA, these things like that. You might feel like you can't keep up. I felt hungry listening to these guys, and I started to realize why maybe some of my past groups haven't worked. I'm actually attracted to this narrative. I'm attracted to this approach to the discussions of the world. I am attracted to facts. Philosophy has actually been attracted. So just many things I've never even considered worthy of my time. All of a sudden, I see a plethora of information for me to dig through, among many other things that I haven't mentioned at this time. But I'm focused on one part of this, which is the political stance of how I got to this point. And so I ended up having the opportunity to work, but it was very short, very brief, because I wasn't fit for the job. Just to be honest, I'm not fit for what they needed to do. I had an opportunity to work there as a marketer, but my concern, I guess, I was too stronghold to propose my ideas from things I've learned from conservatives, I guess you could say, and from the science world, things about what we can actually do to impact our culture. And I thought this was the opportune time to bring these together. And especially when you're being told you're in position to collaborate, which means that you're given an executive position to collaborate. It means that you should be able to bring forth these ideas, especially when they're backed by science, statistics, and there's much evidence that these things are worth looking at. But it is a different approach, because instead of addressing external, you would address internal. And that's when I think this was really this was the lever for me that decided for me to stop being, I guess, afraid to speak this truth, along with the plethora of blacks that are starting to feel much more comfortable and confident in supporting Donald Trump. Even if this isn't even about him, this really has nothing to do with him for me. Even though he's hilarious to me, and to some degree he's sarcastic as hell. You can't take a lot of stuff he says seriously, but it's really opened my eyes, and it's allowed me to see that the issues of what we agree about, what we don't agree about, these are serious things now. Because honestly, there was already a plan in motion, whether I knew it or not, and they just needed a placeholder. And that's cool. That's cool. But it just shows me how much I don't agree with Democratic leaders, in my experience. They want to do things in the way that they want to do them, and they believe that that's the way it has always been done, when that's just not true. A lot of things that are done that has developed this country, it's because it was efficient. It was productive. Now, was it always righteous? I mean, come on, no. But we can't throw away everything that has brought us to the point where we're actually free, and that leads me to another experience last year, where there was a leader from New York. Good guy. I like the guy. Nice guy. Has nothing to do with anything. Just to be honest, has nothing to do with anything. And he wanted to come here to, pick up Martin Luther King's legacy and attempt some type of campaign to pretend that he's going to impact the community, as many people do. And I see it again. This is something that I'm seeing in front of my face, and I'm asking, why don't we do this? And one of the main issues for me was that he wanted to call us victims. And that was just a no-go for me. Things were okay until that word. And it didn't take long for that word to come up. And that word offends me at this point. I'm not your victim. I'm not going to these people to tell them that they're a victim. Who they're a victim of. Who's victimizing them outside of themselves and their environment. I'm not going to do that. And that thing was destroyed quickly. It was nothing, because There's no stand we're going to make together where we're going to unite in calling ourselves victims, because I have a better understanding of what that implies and what that means. Because if the individual that you're telling is a victim accepts it, I mean, you just don't care about that person, and you want to tell them that you're going to save them. Do your evil. That's just how I feel about it. That's evil. So after all these experiences, man, I'm done with the Democratic Party. You know, I'm done with it. They have nothing to offer. Now, don't get me wrong, does it need to be abolished? Absolutely not. You know, and we need a balance of left and right. But at this particular juncture, there needs to be a massive change in democratic philosophy. I've had other experiences where I met people who work for the Democratic Party and yet don't know what the Communist Manifesto is. And that's a sin. Like, they don't know what Karl Marx is, who Karl Marx was, excuse me. And they don't know the history of any of the countries that have utilized such philosophy. So listen, I don't want to spend, too much more time. I've already taken up about 30 minutes. But if you're interested in this type of dialogue, because what I want to do is dive deeper into each of these topics and then discuss them on why I agree with these ideas and what is the history behind these ideas. And also, I have a close cousin who I will engage with. Matter of fact, we have a episode or two on the channel as well. He's a deep thinker. Has an anthro background, and I just appreciate the conversation. So this is for people that actually want to understand deeper. This isn't for millions of people. It's probably not for hundreds of thousands of people. I don't know. This is for people that come from, I guess, a background that didn't have table conversations about politics, that didn't have table conversations about the difficulties of the world. This isn't a place to come where we're trying to say things for headlines. Okay, my idea behind Straight Society is to truly establish a community that wants to be progressive, and you're gonna see. I mean, if this was unscripted, I just wanted to get started, to get off the ground for where I'm trying to take this thing. If this attracts you as far as engaging in this type of, and look, I didn't wrestle through much. I'm giving you my experience of why I think it's important to be a conservative. I've seen the negative sides firsthand on what could happen with the Democratic leaders at this point. I don't believe in them.